AHARA came about because of the knowledge I've gained from being a serial entrepreneur spanning multiple disciplines. It's a unique way to approach problem solving, goals, self development, and life in general. This program is forward thinking and positively focused on a new way of thinking and viewing everything in your world. Before becoming a hypnotist, I was a business consultant and a trainer. And I worked with universities, high schools, governments, nonprofits, businesses of all sizes. My specialty was in systems thinking, organizational change, and emotional intelligence. Applying the tools that I was using required a big shift in thinking. And this was challenging for most of my clients because their thought processes had become so ingrained throughout every aspect of their culture that a significant change in thinking would just be too disruptive to their systems. And of course, this was necessary, but it was easier said than done. Humans have been working with the same well defined system for hundreds of years, and sports are no exception. We've been taught to think in terms of either or, where things must neatly fit into specific protocols. The rules of the game, win or lose, makes this especially true for sports. And I've come to believe that instead of trying to change the systems that keep us stuck, what's most effective is to focus on consciousness. Consciousness is that state of awareness where all ideas and thoughts come from, and it's full of endless possibilities. Now, when you can change your old world industrial kind of thinking into the ways of the quantum world that you now inhabit, you will have more than information. You will have transformation. Eckhart Tolle said, the moment you start watching the thinker, a higher level of consciousness becomes activated. Your inner self determines how you see the world and the actions you take. Your beliefs and your rules about life are formed at a very young age, and they're reinforced over time. And there's protective mechanisms that keep you from changing and sometimes even knowing or understanding these beliefs. And those beliefs and perspectives shape your perception of what you think is real. Now, let me give you an example of why this concept of reality is questionable. Years ago, my husband and I took our 6-year-old on our first whitewater rafting trip. We obviously selected the river very carefully with only a few small rapids just to kind of introduce her to this idea and this adventure that we loved. A few months later, we were revisiting that trip with family members. And you would have thought we were on different rivers from the stories that we told. The reality was that we were on a rafting trip, but our perspective of that experience was unique to each one of us. So in quantum physics, there's this term observer effect, and this applies to this mechanical device that's interacting with an object and its effect on measurement. Now, though a physicist might object to the word observer being utilized with humans in real life scenarios, it's reasonable to see how your perspective may impact the experience of something. Hence the recounting of our trip through the eyes of a 6-year-old first-time rafter, a nervous mom, and a no-holds-barred dad. And the world is full of people of all kinds creating their unique river of observations based on their individual experiences and their beliefs. So it's time to realize that one piece of reality doesn't make up the whole map. Reality is multidimensional because each person is part of the hologram, and each component of the entire hologram is reflected in each one of us. And yes, I do love Star Trek. So there's a universe of possibilities, yet humans only select what they see from obvious options, and that's usually from what they can predict and what they can control. And they hold tight to certain ever to the ever-changing conditions. So this creates a lot of angst and disdain for change when life becomes uncertain. But this logical and linear way of thinking has reached its limits because the world is ever expanding into this spaceless and timeless universe. It's necessary to step out of that old systemic way of thinking and leap forward into what's possible. Intentional manifestation, it requires a deeper level of consciousness, and awareness and a clarity of thought. When you understand that you're observing and creating your reality, you can allow for a both and way of thinking rather than an either or way of thinking. You're now living life rather than let life live you and therefore control you. You create from the perspective of where you want to be rather than where you are. Now, science has shown us that through hundreds of experiments and research that our thoughts create our reality. The brain can't tell the difference between what's real and what's vividly imagined. And imagination is a function of the subconscious mind, which is why hypnosis, which easily accesses the subconscious mind, is an effective tool for changing your thoughts and your perspectives. As an athlete, you might already be using guided visualization, and hypnosis puts guided visualizations on steroids. After conducting thousands of hypnosis sessions since 2013, I realized that the work I did in organizations is much easier to accomplish individually. Of course, if understood and practiced by influential athletes, it could change the world. The requirement for success is the desire for change. And this, of course, is why you're even listening to this recording. So, this brings us all the way back to the beginning of this story. 40 years of learning have gone into creating AHARA. And sometimes I get sucked back into the old ways of thinking or I push against new ideas that are presented against me. It still happens. I'm human and I'm continuing to evolve as well. But we're at a time when we need people who think differently to demonstrate how to create a new and improved world. And my objective in creating AHARA is to contribute to developing progressive thinkers. Now, some might say this is idealism in an old world of way of thinking, perhaps. But in the reality I'm choosing to create, it's a world where everybody can see themselves as a part of the whole without feeling like they have less because someone else is prospering. A world in which people dare to solve big problems because they can see infinite possibilities. A world in which people are hopeful and excited about the future. Now, after all this, you might be thinking to yourself, so what does all this have to do with being an athlete? How is this going to help me improve my performance? Well, first of all, children and adults, they look to athletes to be role models. Perhaps you're involved in charities, or maybe you even have your own foundation. You are in a position to influence in ways that no one else can. So if you're looking at AHARA as strictly and only a way to improve your game, then you're not a good fit for AHARA. But I can work with you in other ways. So ask me. But to get different results, you need to think different thoughts. And some of AHARA's tenets may seem curious, but if you desire to think differently, to be different, you might be a good fit. You'll understand how this new way of thinking of both and improves your life and helps you take quantum leaps forward in your self-growth and in your realization. And in doing so, not only do you become the best you can be, but you also improve the world. I'm on the journey with you, and I hope you reach out and give me a call.